Howdy, howdy. We are live on a Wednesday afternoon, a very special day. We are celebrating First Contact Day, April 5th, 2023. I've had my first contact day salmon. I'm patiently awaiting the arrival of the Vulcans in 40 years, and I am thrilled to be here celebrating with my good friend Robbie, aka Earl Grey Trekkie. Robbie, how the hell are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be on a stream with you. When you invited me, I was so happy to be here because I missed that Discord and we had problems and now I'm finally on a stream with you. Um and I haven't slept in, which is good.
Yeah, I was off to a late start this morning, so apologize if we're a little unorganized today. Yeah, I needed a good sleep. We've just had so much damn Star Trek lately. I hate it, don't you? It's like so much work to cover all this and watch all of it. It's just wow, like really takes a toll on me.
Still not getting sick of it though.
No, you can never have too much Star Trek, right? I see there's some lovely people in our live audience, so shout out to a lot of our regulars: Cake is Eternal, Jill 47, Joel, how are you? And my dog Amos wants everyone to know that he is here. He's ready for First Contact Day, for the arrival of the Vulcans. It was a Geek Filter who did some really cool fan art. I'll share in a moment, but he's the one who reminded me, like, oh yeah, we are only 40 years away at this point, which is crazy. I remember in 1996 watching First Contact in the theater, and when Data says, "Oh, we arrived at April 4th, 2063," and Picard's like, "Oh, it's the day before First Contact Day." It's like, that's so far away.
There's so many lines in that film that I know by heart just because that was the film that got me into Star Trek. That was my first contact with Star Trek.
Your first contact was
Yeah, yeah,
First Contact. Oh,
yeah.
let's talk about that a little bit. And we're going to talk about some a variety of things today. We don't have like a big major topic other than, I guess, it's like the theme of Star Trek. But I want to talk to Robbie a little bit about Strange New World season 2. It's right around the corner. I want to get his thoughts on Picard season 3, and we want to talk about some of the things that we're hoping to see in the future with a new show with Star Trek Starfleet Academy, which I guess is what they're calling it. I've never heard someone say like the show is actually called Star Trek Starfleet Academy. That's what we're all assuming, right? But yeah, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the final season of Discovery, and I want to talk about this, potential, hypothetical, possible 25th century sequel show to Picard. I think a lot of people are really excited for those possibilities and the proposed Star Trek Legacy show, as Terry Metalis keeps calling it. So yeah, we'll be chatting about a few different things, but people in the audience are always encouraged to chime in. If you want to leave a super chat, we'll be sure to read what you're saying, and if you want to chime in about any of the stuff we're discussing, please by all means let your opinions be known. But Robbie, I feel like I asked you a question a second ago, and then I rambled on for too long. I didn't give you a chance to answer. What was I about to ask you something?
You were just talking about how we were going to talk about Strange New Worlds and Picard.
Well, let's start with Picard, since I guess that's where we are. But oh no, I remember what I was going to ask you. Your first contact was First Contact.
Yeah.
I knew that you were a big fan of the movie. I didn't realize that was what got you into the franchise. Was that the first time you'd ever watched Star Trek? Do you remember like watching anything prior to that?
No, no, it was a complete accident because basically when I lived in the Highlands, we had DVDs. We had so many DVDs, and me and my sisters, we used to just watch the same DVDs again and again.
Uh
You
huh.
know, Doctor Who,
What
Back to the
what
Future,
what were some of them? Okay, Back to the Future, Doctor Who.
um, Short Circuit, Ghostbusters. Just classic films. Um, and I'd never seen Star Trek, but I thought, okay, I've watched these shows and films so many times that I know the lines off by heart. Is a bit
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. So I saw the blurb for Star Trek First Contact on the DVD shelf, and I picked it out because it looked different and interesting. And I thought, when you see, I think you see like the Borg drone and their lasers the laser eyes when they're just in the dark hallway, and that was like the back, and you see Picard in his like vest. So it looked like a kind of classic action film. You know, I didn't realize what Star Trek was at that time.
Sure,
So
sure, yeah.
I
You're
just
like,
kind of
oh,
thought,
this looks like Predator or something.
yeah, yeah, this just looks like a fun sci-fi flick. So
Yeah,
I watched the film and I enjoyed it. I thought the Borg were interesting, but I'll be honest, as a new film, you know, if you don't know anything about Star Trek really, and I really didn't at that time, it kinda it's a good film, obviously, but you don't really know the characters, so they have all these relationships that you do not know, and that kinda got me into wanting more, and I expected it to just be a run-of-the-mill science fiction show, you know, I expected, "Okay, so they're gonna have, you know, villains every week like the Borg here, it's just gonna be like a, some classic science fiction show." And so I started with Next Gen on Netflix when we moved house and we weren't using DVDs as much. And I liked the concept, but I was finding it really boring because obviously those first two seasons are terrible. And then, um, I really got hooked on the characters, the kind of it, it appealed to me at a time of my life where I felt a bit lonely, and, you know, Star Trek was about, um, it was about a found family, it was about outcasts, it had a beautiful moral center, and I just became completely obsessed. I'd rewatch it. I even remember originally disliking Deep Space Nine because I thought, "This is so different from
it was
Next
so
Gen."
not Next
Yeah, yeah,
Generation. Yeah,
and I don't think I was mature enough to actually understand how interesting the show was as I grew older and rewatched the show. I was like, What was I thinking? This is a fantastic show." Um, but yeah, that was
mm.
my first contact, and then, of course, I met people online, and it just grew, you know?
Well, I'm glad that you've been able to continue this journey. It's been a lot of fun experiencing the fandom with you and my other Trekkie friends that I've made over the years. I think that's a fun topic to discuss today on First Contact Day, is people's first contact with the franchise. Something I feel like I talk about this a lot, but I guess I'll retell my first contact story with Star Trek in a minute if people want to hear it. But I want to hear from anyone watching. If you're able to type wherever you are, please let us know your first contact with Star Trek story in the comments. I'd like to read some of these. I see one of our regulars, Donnie Pearson, is saying it's also a happy Super Sentai Day, which I know that's like a Japanese like Power Rangers type Super Sentai thing. It's not a genre I'm hyper aware. I was a young boy in the early 90s, so I do know about Power Rangers, but it was never like one of my big pop cultural things. I was kind of into it like that first generation, like those first couple seasons, but I don't know much about Super Sentai other than that. I do like Rita Repulsa and Fightin' Putties, but nothing else. But Jill 47 in our live audience, she's talking about her first contact was the man trap on a black and white Zenith TV. Haha. So I think she's actually referring to the first American broadcast of Star Trek, April. That's September 8th, 1966. April is the current month. What else do we have? Donnie goes on to say, my introduction to Star Trek was season 3 of The Next Generation. Great place to start. When I was a toddler. My reintroduction, the 2009 movie reboot. Donnie sounds like Donnie's just like a couple years younger than me. I was a toddler when TNG got started in the 80s. Hi, Joanne. Glad you were able to pop in on your break at work. Joel says, I was watching Trek from before I can remember. Probably was taken to TMP at a drive-in when I was 2. So he's been watching since the 70s with TMP. Very, very cool. Looks like Sohel is watching from work. Yeah, I thought we might benefit from doing a little bit of an earlier stream in the afternoon. So sorry if people are having to watch from from work, but we get to have Earl Grey Trekkie here because he's phoning it in from Scotland, where it's like getting late at night at this point. So,
Well, I mean, get used to it. That's how I watch your streams from work, and I have to pause and wait and catch up. See, in between customers, I'm watching your streams. As soon as a customer comes in, I pause.
That's a fun thing to hear. Is what do people do when they listen to Tex-Trek or watch Tex-Trek? However you experience the show. It's another thing I'm curious for people to talk about. But I'll say, like, my first contact with Star Trek, Robbie, we had similar, I guess, childhoods. When I was really little, I would watch like the same movies over and over again. VHS was kind of a new popular thing in the 80s. So I guess my mom like figured out like, oh, look, I can keep my kid distracted with the VCR. I'll just like give him these movies to watch. So some of my big ones were the other Star franchise. So I watched Star Wars a lot. The original movie from '77 that was heavily rotated. Ghostbusters was another big one. I love Short Circuit too, when that came out.
Yeah. I it's funny because I used to watch Short Circuit a lot, but I don't. It's not a bad film. It's a good film, but see, when I'm rewatching, I struggle to rewatch the first one. Like the
Uh,
second one's good, but
I thought the
uh,
second one was so cool when the robot got a mohawk and he's like,
yeah,
now I'm
yeah,
pissed off. I was like, hell yeah, that's awesome. It made me want to get a mohawk.
yeah.
Uh, but when Batman '89 came out, that movie was a huge deal. The first Michael Keaton Batman. Apparently not the last. They are bringing him back later this year, I guess, because everything we used to love has to in the 20th century has to return in the 21st. But that's okay. That's why we have Picard season 3. Uh, with Star Trek, though, I remember seeing a commercial for something about this is probably like '89 or 1990. I don't. There's some type of commercial for Star Trek 4 on TV. I think it might have been promoting like it was going to air on TV on one of the main network stations. And I remember seeing like the preview or whatever they were showing and just thinking, I was a real little kid, but it looked kind of funny. Like I think it showed like Kirk and Spock on the bus when he pinches the punk. And it's like, oh, like I knew Star Trek was a thing. I was like, oh yeah, like that guy with like the pointy ears, and they're supposed to be like out in space normally. This looks like a weird thing where like they're walking around on like normal Earth. But I remember seeing that. This is like the first thing I ever remember of Star Trek ever. And then around that same time, I also I saw an episode of TNG. I came in that episode Conspiracy near the end when the admirals are trying to feed the bugs to Riker.
That's a wild episode to come in
Yeah.
at.
And it was like so scary and freaky. And like I watched like from that part to all the way to the end of the episode when Picard and Riker execute the hive controlling monster that was in that commander. That is, we always joke about how like violent and gory that death scene was.
And it
So
goes up his neck. Yeah.
yeah. So I saw that, and so that instead of traumatizing me, it actually made me like, oh yeah, that was kind of neat. I should watch more Star Trek at some point. And then I occasionally would see an episode on TV or something. Like the first episode of DS9 I ever saw was the Nagus in season 1. With remember seeing like, oh, Quark is like this alien with big ears, and then here comes like this older version of the same species with the Nagus, and he's got like looks like a bird nest growing out of his ears, like kind of like gross and old, like all of like the ear hair and stuff. So that kind of like stood out to me as something interesting. I mean, maybe that's where like my love of the Ferengi episodes came from, just having that as an early experience. But it was the promotion for Star Trek Generations when they were like, look, it's the original captain and then the new captain, Picard, and they're going to have a movie together. And that felt like such a huge deal in 1994 that it really made me want to start watching the shows regularly. So I really started tuning into DS9 every week. I didn't see Generations in theater, but I saw it when it hit VHS. I rented it. I started watching the existing movies though. They didn't have the motion picture, the place where I rented movies as a kid. They just didn't have that tape, but they had Wrath of Khan onward to Star Trek 6. So I did Star Trek 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Started watching TOS reruns, and then when Voyager started following it weekly, and then almost like I kind of got into like those other three shows before I really got into TNG, just because like it wasn't TNG wasn't really like on somewhere where I could like tune in, 5 nights a week and watch like some of like how the original series was somewhere, I believe. And I did eventually, get into TNG also. I got the encyclopedia that Michael and Denise Okuda did, and I read pretty much all of TNG out of that instead of watching it. I just read the episode summaries and stuff. So I knew about like Wolf 359 and everything with Q and all of that stuff, like the Klingon Civil War with Galron and Duras, and I read all of that in the encyclopedia. And then by the time Star Trek First Contact came out, I was like a very like seasoned Star Trek fan. I felt like I was like into it. I remember like anticipating that movie so much, looking forward to it, seeing the TV spots they would put on TV, just Picard in like this white tuxedo shooting a Tommy gun, just being like, oh my god, what the hell happens in this movie? Like what is this? And the Borg looks scary as hell. And yeah, just seeing that movie was like such a fun thrill. Just going to the theater, watching First Contact, knowing so little about it, when they like showed the big battle with the cube in the trailers and stuff, I guess I just subconsciously assumed that was going to be like towards like the end of the movie, it's some like big climactic battle. So when all that stuff happened in the first 15 minutes, and then it's like, wow, and now they're going back in time to the 21st century. I just remember being amazed. I had no idea I was going to be seeing that. And it was crazy. It was wild seeing that story for the first time.
Did you watch any Trek with your family?
No one in my immediate family ever watched Star Trek. So the only person I ever would watch Star Trek with was I had a uncle who
Uh-huh.
he's the guy who took me to see First Contact in the theater. So I could talk to him about it. And then I also had an aunt who would occasionally watch some of the episodes, and she watches the shows on Paramount Plus now.
Oh, that's
Um,
pretty cool. Because,
so
sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Well, I feel like I've, since we're Star Trek fans, like there's Star Trek fans and then there's Star Trek fans, and we're like the higher level of Star Trek fans. So we're constantly rewatching these shows and kind of, if we're starting to forget details, we're going to rewatch the show start to finish, and just enjoy the whole run. And I'd rewatched TNG and DS9 a couple of times on my own, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna share this with my mom, right? Because she knew that, I was a Star Trek fan, but she didn't really know it. So we'd watch First Contact, we'd watch that on my birthdays, and the whole family would watch. But I kind of thought this isn't a good representation. If this is all you're getting, you're not, you've got 1% of the picture here. So I went through this extensive process where my mum kindly watched all of TNG and DS9 with me. And that was like a really slow process where we'd watch an episode, and then, whenever she was free, if she wanted to, we'd watch another episode. And it was so much fun to share that with her, because
Yeah.
it's you get so used to just watching it on your own, and you get used to the lines and the kind of characters, but to share that kind of passion, and now she even like, you know, she'll say references like "good tea, nice house," and she'll get them, and it's pretty cool. Or even sometimes my mum will,
She knows the
say a
memes. She
reference.
she
Yeah,
knows the
yeah,
Star
yeah,
Trek memes.
yeah. And she even
Does she even know the one with Ducat and Bashir?
no, 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 she's not
Oh,
quite.
Robbie, you were supposed to say she especially knows the one with Ducat and Bashir.
I show her, like some of the memes, and I talk about Trek, like when we're sometimes having dinner, I'll just start talking about Trek, and I'll maybe annoy half my family, but I just can't stop. Are we when we're going up to my grandpa's, he lives like 2 hours away. That whole
Mm.
drive, I was just talking about Picard season 3 and why I love it, and DS9 world building. Um, yeah, but it's really cool to share it with someone that's open to it and kind of realizes, no, I can see why you like this show, because there's so many different episodes, so many different genres, appealing characters. Um, and now I'm also sharing, we also watch all the new shows together. But now I'm also sharing it with my sister, which is really nice. And I'm watching Avatar with her, because that's a show that she
The
likes.
Nickelodeon Avatar, The
Yeah,
Last
yeah.
Airbender, not the James Cameron
No, no,
movie. Just
no. And I feel like through that, I've got to know her a bit better. Like if she's interested in an episode that we're watching, we'll have a talk about it afterwards. The characters are, something that she maybe agrees or disagrees with or whatever. And that's been such a nice thing to have, as well as watching the new shows. Because I, I was kind of I was looking at all this Picard season 3 news before season 3 came out, and I was like, should I let my sister watch Picard season 3? Should we all watch it together now? Because I'm gonna have to watch it anyway, obviously. But should I watch it with my mum separately to my sister because she's still going through TNG? Because I was thinking, okay, wouldn't it be more fulfilling if she's watched TNG and then Picard season 3, but we just couldn't resist. So it's going to be a bit backwards. She's going to watch Picard season 3 while we're still in the middle of TNG. But.
Well, Starfleet Sohel at our live audience is asking if that's Jack Crusher's younger brother streaming with me. So
No, not quite as dapper.
Robbie, would you ever cosplay as Jack Crusher? Not to say that people should only cosplay as characters they look like, but I think you could pull it off.
Yeah, I could pull it off. Yeah, I think he has a cool.
You see that cool jacket, right?
Yeah, he has kind of suede brown jacket. He has quite a cool vibe.
Would it kill you to like talk in an English accent instead of a Scottish accent? Like, could you manage that?
I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, just
represent
your true Scottishness, Robbie.
See, when I go over to my grandpa's, he has a Yorkshire accent, and I joke and I do his accent sometimes, and it's the only reason I can do it ish well is because he's my grandpa, I know him well, but
you're used to talking to him.
yeah, it's funny how you can have an accent in your head and then you try it and you sound ridiculous.
I just want to say in the comments, Donnie, I'm sorry to see that if that's something that happened recently with your father, but my condolences there. The been there. I know that's really rough. Also, we have some other first contact experiences. Sledge GE2 says my introduction was vaguely seeing the original series as reruns in the mid 80s as a young child. Joel says he had seen all of TOS when TNG premiered, had a Starlog episode guide for TOS. Yeah, a lot of people in the 70s and 80s were watching the TOS reruns before. That's actually, I guess, where like the kind of like the Trekkie phenomenon really grew, was that syndication generation. The boomers and the Gen Xers that were watching kind of in that time between the end of the original series, but before the Berman era started with TNG. Cake is Eternal says I started with TNG reruns on Fox Network when it was TNG, The Simpsons, and The X-Files. Let's say a very, very 90s combination right there in TNG, Simpsons, and X-Files. All those things were pretty huge once upon a time.
I actually I know you're saying Jack Crusher, but most of the time I'm kind of cosplaying like Bev with this blue, and then I've got like the wee Live Long and Prosper.
You got the lab coat.
Yeah, well, kind of.
Kinda. I do appreciate seeing her lab coated again in season 3 of Picard.
Yeah, I do miss. I love the production design, but it's funny because someone pointed out that the Wrath of Khan as a film, the bridge is darker than in Picard season 3. But I think because of the way, I don't know, because of the way that the bridge looks so kind of metallic, and the fact that the L cars are blue, it just makes it look a lot colder. Like
there's a coldness to the Titan.
Yeah,
I was rewatching some Picard season 3 last night actually, and I was thinking about that. Yeah, I feel like they did a good job making that Titan bridge feel different from the Stargazer bridge. Then part of that is like the lighting and it has like a cooler color palette, right? That's what you'd call that. Like the Stargazer was a bit warmer. There was a lot more reds and stuff.
Well, the Stargazer kind of it was too much for me. Like I see the amount of when you watch season 2, there's so many strips of LED lighting on the Stargazer bridge that when all of them are lit up, it's a bit over the top. So I actually prefer it being too dark than like loads of white lights because it was like
Mm.
all the strip lights were on the Stargazer in season 2.
Yeah, well, they were at like a. We never, I guess, saw the Stargazer when it was just idle very much. I guess there's
Yeah.
like a few scenes of like Rios just, like having a security officer throw him cigars and stuff. But for the most part on the Stargazer, it was like, oh my God, we're at red alert and the Borg are here and everything might blow up. It's very like flashy sparks, explosions, red alert, sirens, all of that stuff. Um, Joel, I love that you had a Wrath of Khan Viewmaster disc. He's talking about the 3D SETI ills. This is really cool seeing people's like old Star Trek memories, all the stuff from childhood and stuff. Jill goes on to say, "My mother absolutely adored TOS. She never ever went crazy for a TV show like that again. She was crazy about the battlefield bonds and crazy circumstances that Big Three built." Jill, I've never been crazy about a show like I've been crazy about Star Trek, so I definitely understand that. That's cool that your mom was able to enjoy the show that much. Joel says my dad had watched the original run and got my family into it. Yeah, that's I never had that experience. Never had like that. Like our family, our home, like we watch Star Trek. That sounds really cool though. I'm always excited to hear people share those memories. And Jill is saying that they watched as a family. I think I know our friend Sohel has said that was his experience. Uh, his family watched Trek together. So very cool.
I remember that in season 2 of Picard, um overall I wasn't satisfied with the way that season turned out, but that first episode, um more so than even like the way it was written and the Titan, what I found most nostalgic was the sound effects. You know, there were so many TNG sound
Mm,
effects, TMP sound effects. The klaxon at the start, it was that kind of action set piece start that just got you right into the feel of, this is going to be an epic season. And I think this season of Picard, from a writing standpoint and an acting standpoint, and visually, it's beautiful, but I just can't get over the sound effects. Every time I hear, one of those TNG or I try and place it, is that, oh, wait, was that a DS9 one?
yeah.
Or it was the comms. Um, I love that. I actually point out when we're watching, oh, that's my sister, even she's newish because we're watching TNG together. She actually
Hmm.
said, wait, that's a TOS sound effect. And she said, oh, that's really cringy that I know that.
No, that's not cringy. You're learning. You're becoming part of the Trekkie family. It's awesome. That's funny. Uh, Let me ask you a little bit about Picard season 3. People in our audience probably they hear me talk about it all the time, every week. They know that the things that I've been enjoying in it. Robbie, you were pretty hyped for this. Someone who was a huge TNG fan, knowing that we were going to get a big TNG reunion. I know Sir Patrick hates when we call it a reunion, but I mean, yeah, it was like everyone back on screen for the first time since Nemesis. Kind of a big freaking deal. What's been your overall experience? 7 episodes into season 3.
Well, I mean, first, the anticipation was so high because see, before season 3 even came out for like a year, we had all these, you know, teasing pictures from Terry Metalis, that I adored because I was like, look at that. similar to, the production design of First Contact. We had like that phaser rifle armory shot, and then the sick bay. I got so excited when we saw the bio bed that you posted, because I thought, oh, this is great. Beverly's going to be back in action, and he was saying, that she was going to be doing some doctoring, and that's all I wanted, to see our crew back together again. And I was just, so many months of thinking, how is it going to be? Is it going to be like First Contact? Are they all going to be back in the Enterprise? Are they going to be exploring? What are they going to be like? We're going to see these people after so long. How are they going to explain why we've not seen Beverly? And season 3 has been fantastic so far. I think the first episode was probably um it was probably the most nostalgic in the way that it was kind of like a reference after reference. We're seeing Riker and Picard getting back together, Beverly in action, so much anticipation and mystery, um, and evoking the Wrath of Khan with um, the space dock scene, which I have rewatched
Mm.
so many times when Seven is leaving space dock. It was so beautiful, with the music and stuff. And I feel like I really missed a lot of the formality and the dialogue, because fault the Wrath of Khan for a revenge film, if you will. I really like the militaristic style in that film. The boatswain whistle,
Hmm.
the captains on the bridge. That kind of I've always loved that aspect of Star Trek. I think it makes the universe feel realistic. And when you get the balance of that kind of formality, but also um, engaging character scenes that don't feel like they're just officers, they're people as well. Um, that's been something that I really missed and I've loved. Um, I felt like the second episode I found a bit slow because we have Picard and Riker on the Ilios, and we're still meeting Jack, and they've got the whole transport inhibitors. I felt like that episode was a wee bit slow. Um, and then episodes 3 and 4 were fantastic. Um, the way that they've continued to use the changelings has been really interesting, because if we're being honest, they never, DS9 used them, but we didn't really get to see them um with the kind of special effects of Picard, where they can have this huge threat again, and we get to see. Obviously, we had the Homefront Paradise Lost two-parter in DS9, but we kind of are seeing an evolution and a continuation of a fantastic story that always could have kept going if DS9 had continued. And it does feel a bit like fan fiction sometimes, but I feel like it's done so well that it's intriguing and engaging. And even if you strip every one of these next gen characters, I feel like you've still got a really interesting story. Of course, that helps with our engagement in the characters, because you don't need to create a whole new crew of characters for us to feel attached to. That helps in that we don't need to get as many scenes with them to care for them, and obviously that helps in a 10 episode season. But overall, I think it's been fantastic. I think the latest episode was my least favorite. I thought it was kind of
A lot of
it
people
felt a
seem to
bit
have
slow,
a lot of people
and
had a hard time with it. I thought, yeah.
um, it felt sorry.
What? Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I feel like it felt like the most cliche. And I know that it's a setup to the next episode, but also because it was the shortest one, and because we're not really learning anything new in that episode. Not really. I mean, it's just we've
We
got
do
the
get
Jack.
Vatic's backstory and all of that stuff. So I thought that was
Yeah, I felt like that was. I'd been hearing about Vatic and her backstory before I watched the episode because I was a bit late to watching the
Hmm.
episode and I was intrigued and I thought, oh, that should be interesting. And I assumed we'd get more out of it to empathize with her than her talking to Picard and us seeing a couple of scenes. Like I assumed it would be, I don't know, like because I was only hearing about it, I assumed it'd be the opening to an episode or it would like be maybe an episode focused. Well, I suppose we wouldn't maybe have time for that, but an episode that was more focused on like Vatic's origins, because the way Terry Matalas had put it, and maybe we still will, but I'm still not on board with Vatic. You know, that scene still it hasn't really done much for me empathizing with her. Um
I've enjoyed the character lately because I think Amanda Plummer has been doing kind of interesting things in her performance. I kind of like a big Star Trek villain when they're not like the central focus, when they're more of just kind of an obstacle to keep our heroes busy, which I think is probably what they're going to do with Vatic after they've established the the scary face of whatever. I still have no idea what that is. I guess like maybe Borg, just because I think like whatever's going on with Jack and Picard might be Borg related, but even that like doesn't make like a ton of sense. Just at least not with anything obvious I can think of based on what we've seen. However, yeah, I do. If if they don't give us like a I don't know, like something in the last couple of episodes with with a more interesting, compelling conflict against whoever's she's actually working for, then yeah, I would be a little disappointed. But I think I said very early on that I thought like Vatic might be more of a red herring than anything else, and that there's going to be a bigger because like what you mentioned with like these changelings, it is like a great story. It is like a great follow up to DS9. I love the real world ramifications of like, oh yeah, look at like all like this bad stuff that y'all did during the Dominion War, and it's coming back to hurt the Federation now. I think that's a good story, even though like I don't like Section 31 giving that much official status in Starfleet, kind of uh just it's one of the few things I'll say that like I hate in Star Trek Picard, but yeah, like I hate that. I think it's one of the it's my least favorite thing that show's ever done. Even like there were some things in seasons 1 and 2 I didn't like, and I like this less. Having Section 31 be like an official part of Starfleet. And I don't really blame Star Trek Picard for that. I think that was a franchise-wide decision. They want to incorporate Section 31 more. They want to do a spin-off show. They want to do uh, stuff with 31 and Discovery, and they're building something in Lower Decks with Brad Boimler and or not Brad. What's the other one? Thomas Boimler, right?
yeah.
So we'll see, but yeah, the idea of like making Picard's final villain, like the final boss of the TNG saga, a changeling, just like doesn't really make sense. It's like that would make more sense for DS9, but not so much for TNG. So we need something else.
Well, it kind of it's so fanfic-y, you know, like if you laid out this whole season, you know, Beverly is in command of the Elios, and you know, we find out she has a son, and it sounds if you just laid out this season to me with the story beats, I would not be very interested. I'd think it was a bit soapy. And when we found out that Jack was Beverly's son, I I really wasn't sure at all because it seems like something you'd see in, I don't know, like a, you know, I don't know, a sitcom or a soap.
Yeah, I was
Um,
so adamant I did not want that. We were speculating, is Ed Spalier going to be like a secret child of Picard and Crusher? And I was like, please don't do that. I will hate that if they. I've enjoyed his character so much though that I.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they've given the way they've integrated it with giving Beverly that kind of impassioned speech and integrating her into the storyline so prominently. Um, she really sold it, and the writing sold it, even if the performance kind of skirts over, okay, is this realistic or not? But I suppose they were kind of constrained by the fact that we had Laris and, you know, Terry wasn't involved in season one. How is he going to explain why we've not, you know, seen Beverly? So I suppose they had to come up with something big, and they've used that to create a compelling story. And they've evolved Beverly and Picard by giving them this. You know, it was always a will they, won't they kind of thing in TAG. So it's interesting to actually see it being a will they, and to see Picard, this duty obsessed character who, you
Mm.
know, was horrible to Wesley, even though I disliked him, have to actually grow up at, I don't know his age, like 90 or something, and realize that he has to be the parental figure that he never really had. Um, and
Mm.
it's a very difficult time in his life to realize all this and to process this, but you can see through the performance and the writing and the subtle scenes that they're giving of Jack and Picard together that they are bonding so well, and they're, you know, having an understanding of each other.
It's
And
just a joy
Picard,
to watch. It's just
yeah,
how
yeah.
can I complain about this? The material they're giving me is just so damn good.
And the actor, I mean, if they cast anyone lesser than Ed Speleers, if it was some, I don't know, CW actor, this would come across as so poor. But he feels like he has a bit of a younger Picard from Tapestry we saw. So it's like Picard has kind of seen his younger self that we've heard of and, you know, seen glimpses of. Um, and we've had quite a few scenes of just them together, not as much of Beverly and Picard as I'd like, but it makes sense because we already know the Beverly Picard relationship, whereas um we have to realize and understand what this new relationship with Jack and Picard is like. Because this is new and we need to get attached if we want to see any more of it. And I think that's what has really got me really invested in the season. You know, the changeling plot is interesting, but you
Hmm.
strip away all these fantastic character scenes that are actually pushing along the story, and you don't have an engaging three-dimensional story. I mean, I was thinking recently, rewatching DS9, there are so many scenes in that show that could be like a, I don't know, like Cheers, where they're at a bar and
Yeah, yeah.
you get the relationship of these characters and the dynamic through the social interactions. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that's been kind of like a bit missing in the newer shows because
That
of the season long
that
storyline.
like that scene of Quark and Garrick talking about root beer in Way of the Warrior. Like that tells you so much about both those people.
Yeah, yeah, because even though you had this serious, arc-driven plotline, and I think personally for me, DS9 to this day did it best, where they didn't just have a season-long storyline, they had a show-long storyline. So you got to realize the changelings in such a three-dimensional way because they weren't restricted to one season to give them depth. You know, you saw
Hmm.
the the ramifications as the tension builds up and the way Odo has to deal with his species as an outsider and be conflicted. There was so much depth. And I feel, and you also get the light-hearted episodes in between. It's not completely serialized.
And I think
Um,
DS9 really deserves a lot of credit for being able to shift tones so seamlessly.
yeah,
I mean, some people might disagree. I heard some people say like it always got darker than I wanted, except for like it got goofier than I wanted, and it's like, well, I mean, I don't know, but for me personally, like I love like season 6 of DS9 when I was exploring that with Dave recently, just like how it would just bounce back and forth between like look at like the serious like hard hitting shit you get in something like in the Pale Moonlight, for example. But then they also gave us the Magnificent Ferengi that same season around like the same time. So it's just the fact that like the show had that level of versatility that it could just exceed at like so many different tones. I love that about DS9. I think the original series had a bit of that too, And I it's something that I think we're seeing a lot of now in modern Trek with Strange New Worlds. They can do like this really tense, submarine battle episode with the Gorn, and then next week it's a rom com with Spock and uh uh
T'Pring.
T'Pring. Thank you. So yeah, it's Strange New Worlds seem to have inherited a bit of that flexibility in storytelling.
Yeah, I feel like Strange New Worlds, it's the variety that,
Hmm.
variety is what keeps things interesting.
Agreed.
When you had the Strange New Worlds, I think partly why it's so refreshing is because we're getting those kind of familial interactions. Pike is like a kind of a dad to his crew. We're seeing him doing casual stuff like cooking, and all these kind of aspects makes Strange New Worlds, you know, interesting and not. Um, I don't think there's anything wrong with a season-long plot line. I just believe that 10 episodes isn't enough to balance the characters and the season-long storyline with enough depth a lot of the time. I rewatched that 6-episode arc with Ducat taking over the station, and that's probably, one of the darkest parts of DS9. And you have Kira saying stuff like, "What am I now? Although a collaborator after
Mm.
the Bajoran woman hangs herself." But you also have the comedic stuff with Garrick on the Jem'Hadar ships. It was always striking that balance.
Hmm. Yeah, and they were still telling, like an ongoing story. Like over the course of those 6 episodes, there's a very tight, coherent arc. There's actually several arcs, because we have like the stuff going on the station, we have the stuff going on with the Klingons, with Alexander, we have the stuff going on with the Defiant crew and them being stranded on a planet for an episode, and uh, yeah, I think that another show that hasn't gotten enough recognition or enough good credit, but like really like telling like those good like ongoing story arcs. Not just Deep Space Nine, not just Picard season 3, but we gotta give a big shout out to Star Trek Prodigy. It
Yeah,
The first 20 episodes of that show, just it was such a well paced, well delivered story arc that a lot of modern Trek has attempted between like Discovery and Picard, and I think Prodigy has just outshined them. And no one talks about it because it's like it's like the little kid show, it's the Nickelodeon show, it's the show that they always like break up the episodes in 5 episode chunks, and I mean not anymore, but that's how they started off doing. And yeah, I felt like Prodigy was just kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the franchise, but it's done its job so well, and I would love for Prodigy to get a third season. I know Nickelodeon. I've heard like sometimes like they don't order past the second season for their new animated shows these days. But I mean, if anything deserves it, you would think it would be Prodigy, right?
yeah. I mean, I feel like I don't feel like they're gonna cancel Prodigy. At this stage with the writers, they got 20 episodes to play with in season
Hmm.
one, and they got the
They,
time
they're still
to.
we're only halfway
Yeah, yeah,
through like what they've ordered. There's still like another 20 right around the corner. So
yeah. And especially with Discovery finishing, I don't think they're going to want to end any shows that they and Picard. I don't think they
mhm.
want to end any shows that they have out now. I think they're going to be cautious about how.
Well, it looks like I've lost Robbie, but that's okay. I'm sure he'll return. But I'm curious, people here like but no one's talked about Prodigy in a while. I guess since it wrapped in season 1 in December. So yeah, but like are people here excited for potentially more Prodigy? I know we have 20 episodes for sure, but after that, hopefully like I have heard people who work on Prodigy say like, yes, like viewing Prodigy will really like help out its future. So if we're gonna signal boost anything today on Star Trek Day, I'd like to encourage people to talk up Prodigy, get your friends watching Prodigy, rewatch Prodigy. I don't know. Like, let's do what we can to help that show, because they've really just been consistently good from day one. Robbie, you were passing through a nebula or something. We
Yeah, I
had some
got some
subspace interference. It happens.
anomalous readings there. I think with Strange New Worlds, that's what, June 15th?
Yeah, it's right around the corner. We have what, like that's 2 months,
Yeah,
right? May, June.
I don't even know what I want from season 2 because it's a show that's very simplistic and that we get different
Hmm.
genre kind of driven episodes
And if
and
you don't
different
like an episode, it's fine. It's like, well,
yeah.
maybe next week it'll be something totally different, and I'll like it more. You know?
Yeah, but I liked all 10 of those episodes. None of them were like overly complex. They were just kind of relaxed adventures. So when people
Mm.
say, "Okay, what do you want from Strange New World season 2?" I'm kind of like, I don't even know.
But I think there's a lot of cool corners of the 23rd century Star Trek universe that they haven't gotten around to, that would be fun to explore. Like a lot of the stuff that Discovery did in its first 2 seasons, they could potentially pick some of that stuff up. We could always see Sark. We could always see uh Mud. Although that'd be kind of weird because like he's not supposed to know Spock until Mud's women's. We're I guess going to do more stuff with the Gorn, which that's the thing I probably liked the least in season 1, was the depiction of the Gorn. But I really want the Tholians. I would love to see Tholians, and I would love to see Klingons that are a little bit more like closer to what I want out of Klingons
I
than what we
think
got in
we're
Discovery.
gonna get that because
We know we're
Babs,
getting Klingons, so
yeah, Babs has,
he said it on the Ready Room last year.
yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
Mbenga and Klingons season 2. So something's gonna happen there.
I hope it
Uh,
doesn't go too dark like with the Gorn because I felt like having Laan kind of traumatized by the Gorn was a little dark, and I hope it's not too similar with Mbenga.
you know what I want with the Klingons is I want like a lot of like Cold War tension, like we had in like the original series. And I think especially coming off of the back of the Klingon War in Discovery and how brutal and terrible that was. I mean, it was like really bad. Like the Federation was getting their asses kicked for most of that war. So I think it would honestly you would be able to relate to the characters if there is like a major fear of like another war. A lot of the stuff that they were doing back in the 60s, with the original series with the Klingons, was all based on like real life Cold War tension. And a lot of people alive then, yeah, especially the people making Star Trek, like Roddenberry himself, they not only remembered World War II, they served in World War II. So they probably had like an awareness of, yeah, like it is scary when you're faced with potentially another massive war like that. It could like destroy society literally. It's like an actual danger of that. So I think they could do some neat stuff with the Klingons in season 2. And please give us Tholians. They mentioned them in short treks. Pike mentioned the Tholians one time. I would love to see them do some fun stuff with Tholians in Strange New Worlds. So
I'm really glad that they announced that they're getting that bar set for season
oh
2
yeah.
because I feel like that will, season 1, of course, they have to kind of, I suppose, make things mostly on the bridge because they've not got all the sets and they can't really do everything. But having that kind of personal nature should be really interesting. Like it'll be weird to see uh our characters, just hanging out at a bar.
I love that they have that bar, Robbie, but I also need to point out that we just got an extremely generous super chat from Steph Needs Carbs in the live audience. Thank you so much for the very, very, very generous $49.99. Steph says, by far my new fave Star Trek content. I assume you're talking about Strange New Worlds, Steph, but let me know if that's correct or not. But thank you so much. That was extremely kind, and you helped make this a very pleasant first contact day. Very, very appreciated. Robbie, what else for Strange New World season 2 that we know we're getting? Like we know Klingons, we know we're getting more
Um,
Kirk.
oh,
I think
I'm so done with that. And
with
it's,
Paul Wesley's Kirk.
well, not only do I dislike the performance,
I
one,
struggled with it.
he is too thin to be Kirk, in my opinion. Sorry.
He doesn't quite look like Kirk, and he doesn't quite
He's the dark
act like
hair,
Kirk.
like,
But in real life, I've seen pictures of him, and he doesn't look that dark. He has like a little bit more, like light brown colored hair and like different lighting. So it's like it's weird that they weren't able to like show. He actually looks more like William Shatner, like outside of Strange New Worlds, than he did like in that episode. So I'm
yeah, I I feel like
I'm willing
maybe
to give him a shot just because like they stressed that the way he played Kirk is very different in season 2. So it's like, okay, that with that being, but I'm with you, Robbie. If it's presented the same way, I will be a little disappointed.
I'm hoping that he will go for a similar change that Ethan Peck did, because I
Mm,
wasn't completely on board with Ethan Peck when we saw him in Discovery. But I read articles and he said that he watched key Star Trek episodes with Leonard Nimoy in it, and it really shows in Strange New Worlds the difference, the way he presents his voice, and deepens it for the. He already has a deep voice anyway, but the way he kind of has some of the inflections of Nimoy, and you could almost swear that it's like a kind of alternate Nimoy talking. Um, I'm hoping that he sits down and watches some episodes and tries to not mimic, you know, William Shatner, but take some more of his kind of swagger and maybe a bit more
yeah.
oomph into the performance.
And it's just what I don't know if this is true or not, or if they're just trying to, I guess, course correct the narrative. But the thing I heard is like he was intentionally trying to downplay like that swagger and confidence as a guy who's like, oh, he's in command of the Farragut instead of the flagship, the Enterprise. So I don't know. Maybe they know what they're doing. We'll find out June 15th, because I think Kirk is going to be in that first episode. The infamous location pictures that leaked of them shooting in Toronto. I think that was for the first episode of the season, so we will find out very soon. But yeah, we know we're getting that. We know we're getting Klingons. We know we're getting Carol Kane as a new engineer. So I just watched her the other day in or no, at Christmas time I watched Scrooged. She plays the one of those ghosts, like the fairy godmother type one. And then I since then I rewatched the Addams Family Values, and she's the grandma in those Addams Family movies. So she didn't get a character poster today. They released like these character posters. I was hoping we'd get a trailer. We had a trailer to be talking about that right now, but instead we got like these character posters.
And let's be honest, that's the bare minimum. I mean, come on, we know what they look like.
Yeah, nothing's really changed since season 1. I mean, it looks like the same uniform, same
Ensign
costuming.
Ahura, we see that at least, she's got the badge instead of a
Instead of the cadet thing.
yeah.
Other than that, not much else is different. I was thinking Jess Bush would have different hair in season 2, because I saw like a picture of her like while they were shooting the season, and it looked like her hair was cut different. But I don't know. Maybe she wears a wig. I don't know. What do I know? But I for whatever reason I'm already getting hyped. I know like we're not even done with Picard yet, but I'm already hyped for season 2 of Strange New Worlds. I always do this. Whatever show that we're currently on, what we're currently talking about. Like when we got like 75% of the way through Lower Decks, I started getting like really excited for the return of Prodigy. And then when we started like getting close to the end of Prodigy's run in the winter, I was like, man, like me and Dave are about to finish our DS9 talks. That's going to be fun. And then, when Dave and I were covering DS9 in January and February, I was getting so excited for Picard. And now, Picard's not even over, but I'm hyped for more Strange New Worlds in 2 months.
I hope that Strange New Worlds, what you were saying about Sarek and Kirk, I feel like even if you know, Paul Wesley was amazing as Kirk, I'd still not be completely on board because there's the worry with a prequel, and although I like Enterprise's last season a lot, that you're gonna fall into the rabbit hole of doing old stuff. You know, it's interesting to see a new aspect to like a character, you know, like if we were to see more of Spock's relationship with Sarek, that would be really fertile ground to explore because that's such a unspoken relationship that we see and
Mm.
conflict that we only really get implied because they're Vulcans. But at this younger stage, I suppose it could be more uh, contentious. We could maybe see that um, grow. But at the same time, if we're seeing Kirk and if we have an episode that's kind of prominently focusing on Kirk and you know, Spock and Sarek, that's two episodes already that are, you know, not really strange or new. You have to kind of balance it, like the way that they, um, the way that I would like it is that you know you've got an episode or two that are like that that kind of add something new to old lore, but you're also doing new stuff. And apparently, I believe next season we'll have more worlds because when you really think about it, the first season didn't have a whole lot of, you know, strange new worlds. Mm,
I don't want to go through like the whole season mentally, but
was it
um,
3 or
I
uh,
don't. There's a new planet in the first episode
uh-huh.
where they witnessed like the battle they weren't supposed to see. The
Second
kind of
one's a comet.
second one is a comet, but there is a world that is in danger from the comet.
Right. Well,
So
yeah.
I guess they didn't explore it, but I don't know. We had like the snowy world where Hemmer died. We had the floaty world where they tortured children to keep their planet going. Um, I guess yeah, Memento Mori. They don't really go to a planet with the Gorn and the. I mean, they're in like a gas giant, but that doesn't count. There's like that colony, but we don't really see much there. They got wiped. They got massacred by the Gorn. We were at Starbase 11 for a whole episode and Spock amok. So
I feel like maybe what I'm hoping for is more interaction with and what I really liked about Lift as We're Suffering Cannot Reach is we got the kind of idea of a civilization in that
mm.
one episode. You know, like in some of the episodes, we just got to see the kind of curiosity of landing on a planet, but we didn't really get to interact with the wider participants. You know, what I love about TNG is when we'd meet, um, you know, we'd beam down to a planet and maybe, you know, Picard or Riker or whoever would just meet like a couple of people in a small rural looking house. And it is so unique, you know, because in Picard season 3, I was so annoyed at that Blade Runner-esque planet because it's so
Oh,
generic,
Metalis Prime.
you know, and so
They spend a lot of time
uninteresting.
there. Yeah, I think they kind of stayed there too long. I liked the criminal gangster Kryn, but I'm like, did we really need like a second crime lord? Like, I feel like they're just padding out the story so that for two reasons. One, to give Worf and Raffi something to do until they're ready for them to meet the Titan people. And two, I guess it does kind of make their easy break into Daystrom Station make a little bit more sense. Okay, like they did have to go get like this MacGuffin to like get past security. So, but yeah, I mean, like they could just had like Sneed had the key and they just got it from him then, and left Metalis Prime a couple episodes earlier. They could have done that. So that did. I feel like we overstayed our welcome there too. At the
Yeah.
same time, I'm thankful that I got something interesting there because I thought Kryn as like the Vulcan gangster was kind of neat.
Someone said, I can't remember, maybe it was a podcast that it felt like um Kren and what's his name, the Vulcan mobster?
The
The
Vulcan is Kryn and the Ferengi is Sneed.
yeah, I was getting mixed up there. It felt like they were kind of drawing out the story a bit by having two similar characters. You know, it was
Hmm.
kind of like a bit of a repeat, but I'm okay with that.
Right.
You know, overall, I think the pacing has been pretty strong. Um, yeah, I just
Agreed.
hope that we see some of the smaller stuff, um, maybe some political stuff on a planet that would be, um, quite interesting because I believe it's uh, early in Discovery season 4, there was that episode that was all about the Vulcan politics, and that was fantastic. I loved how old school it felt.
Let's talk about Discovery a little bit. Season 4 of Discovery was my favorite season of that show. I know a lot of people, they really loved the Pike stuff in season 2. A lot of people really loved the exploring the 32nd century for the first time in season 3. But for me, the show worked best in season 4. I think that was the most confident Discovery had ever been. I felt like that was the first time they felt like they could take a breather and not have to have like these big action moments constantly, and they could have like these long chatty kind of more traditional Star Trek talkier scenes. And my issue with season 4 though is it's kind of what we were talking about, like, padding out the story with Worf and Raffi and Picard season 3 of them hanging out on Metalis Prime for so long. I felt like Discovery season 4 really stretched its plot uh to take up the whole 13 episode season, and it probably could have been it, more so in the second half of the season. Like it was weird how they dropped it. They went on hiatus, and then Prodigy came back for a few weeks, and then we switched back to Discovery for the last 6 episodes, I believe. I think like those last 6 episodes after Book goes rogue and kind of betrays Michael, and he goes off on his own. I feel like, okay, they could have wrapped the season with just like 3 more episodes. They didn't need 6. They could have done it in 3.
It's funny because I feel like every episode of season 4 was, if I remember correctly, every episode of season 4 was pretty good. I mean, it was enjoyable. And see, when you look back on, I've not watched it in a while, but Enterprise season 3, it's
Hmm.
amazing how much they draw out the Xindi plotline, you know.
It is, and I with Enterprise season 3, I felt like they do kind of drop the ball with the Zindi arc, unfortunately. But I mean, it started off with a pretty good amount of potential. And it's just, I know, like, it was a weird time in television. We were, as like a whole industry, trying to switch from more episodic type storytelling, which would sell better to syndication, to now doing like longer arc driven type stories that people with VCRs and DVRs and eventually DVD box sets and streaming and stuff would find more enjoyable. So the writers were probably struggling to figure out how to pull that off. That Zindi, they had like a lot of momentum and making like good pace, good progress with their story until they got to like around like episode 18 or 19 or 20, and then they kind of have to like hit the brakes and just meander for a little bit before like the end of the season. Like there's those last few episodes right before we get to like the final 3. I think that it's kind of clunky.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny because see, when you look back, you have Trip dealing with the death of, I believe it's his
Elizabeth.
sister.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not very dissimilar from Book and
Ah,
Planet, but
yeah.
the way that Discovery did it was
That
so much
that that was
more.
his Florida.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because the way we see it in Enterprise, it's Trip. I believe we see that same clip again and again of him dreaming of, I believe, Elizabeth being
Yeah.
um
Elizabeth when he's
yeah,
a little
yeah.
kid. Yeah.
And it's that terrible green screen, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the way they did it with Book was far more it felt kind of TNG-ish, the way they were. Culber was like a counselor, and I feel like he was not reading out of a counselor's
Those
guidebook.
those scenes were good. Those scenes were
Yeah,
so gold. Yeah, I loved that.
and also, I can't remember his name now, but the actor who plays Book really sold it,
Oh,
you know?
David Ajala.
David Ajala, yeah, yeah, because it was an epic way to start the season with Quajon blowing up, but we kind of followed through with the mental health and the character, which made it interesting. And obviously, you see Book and Burnham and their relationship progress, and Saru and Burnham. Um, season 3 had world building with Trill and stuff that made it really interesting. But as I said, I found it more. It was a bit too action packed at times. Osira was a bit of a one-dimensional villain,
I
whereas
loved. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no. I was basically just saying season 4 was like a. I think with Michelle Paradise, she knew what she was going for, and
Mm.
um, it was less action packed, and it was more like the thematic of season 3 was very Trek with the the burn and the way that turned out. But season 4 was really kind of unique, and even if it makes no sense the way they were communicating with these aliens, it was really interesting and different and unique, and it really got to the heart of Star Trek and Book's trauma and the communication. I was really enjoying that season.
Yeah, no, I'm totally on board with everything you just said, and Discovery season 3, I felt like was a bit of a missed opportunity because I was really on board what they were doing with those final few episodes, and the big conflict with Osira that they had kind of set up to be the climax of the season. And then just like that last episode, it just when they tried to go, like, oh, just make it like a full blown actiony romp and ignore most of the headier ideas we were discussing in the previous 2 episodes. It's kind of lost me. And season 4 was the first time Discovery ended on a really strong note for me. The like season 2, I had a lot of fun with season 2, and then like the ending, just like people should go back and listen to the Tex-Trek podcast episode we did on uh Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2, because I went into that episode like so excited for what they were doing with Discovery, and just seeing Pike, seeing the Enterprise, all of that stuff. And then yeah, like that season 2 finale, just like it really confused me, the way that they wrapped up their Red Angel storyline and all of that stuff. But yeah, I did enjoy season 4. I'm looking forward to season 5 of Discovery. A little sad that it's going away, but I get it. We have like a bunch of Star Trek in production. 5 years is a great run, especially these days. And in order for them to greenlight more shows, they needed they needed to get rid of one, so it made sense. It's going to be interesting to see how they wrap things up. I'm thrilled that they took the time to uh, write some new material and shoot some new material to make sure that it is a satisfying ending. A lot of TV shows don't get that. We're going to do more. There, Jonathan Frakes talked about there was a setup for season 6 in the season 5 finale, which he directed, but I'm guessing they'll change that now that they're reshooting stuff. Uh, I do see in our live audience, Geek Filter is here, aka Aaron. So it's probably a good time to, if you didn't see it on his social medias, he did some fan art to celebrate First Contact Day today, and here's the poster he made of the Phoenix preparing to launch in just a mere 40 years, so less than 4 decades away from First Contact Day. What do you think of that, Robbie?
I like it. It's kind of Art Deco style.
It's a cool perspective. Like looking up next to the Phoenix. Uh, I love the Enterprise E
Could be a postcard.
up there. Yeah. I plan to be there in Bozeman in 40 years, April 5th, 2063. I don't know about you, Robbie, but might be a good time to fly over to the States and hang out in Bozeman with me. How old are you gonna be in 2063?
Um, I don't really want to think about that. But well, if you keep saying that you're gonna make it, and every single stream until like every first contact stream until we get there, then I'm sure we'll manage. We might be frail, but we'll have hypospace.
Yeah, I'll be damn near 80, but I plan to be there. And thank you, Aaron. I Just one moment. Okay, that was weird. That froze on my end. But thank you, Aaron, for the $5 super chat. He says, "Happy first contact day. Got your salmon ready?" I did. I had some salmon just before we started. Actually, I had some salmon for lunch. So,
But
uh,
yeah, sorry.
why do you think that's a thing? The first contact days. I know, like it was something Ransom said in Lower Decks, right? That's where it came from. But why is that the go-to fish? I wonder, or the go-to food? I wonder for
Um,
first contact day.
I don't know. Salmon is, I suppose, fish is kind of Vulcan, isn't it? Vegetarian, ish, kind of.
It's pescatarian, I think.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
would
I
you
don't
think?
know what I'm talking about, but
Oh,
it's kind of.
that's like a middle ground. It's like, okay, we know y'all don't like meat, but it's fish, so it kind of doesn't count, right? We're trying to meet you halfway, Vol. That's actually maybe Zephram. That seems like a very Zephram Cochrane thing to do. Maybe that's what he did. Maybe like the Vulcan. Maybe it's like, well, sit down, Vulcans. Y'all want something to eat? And they're like, well, we don't eat meat. And he was probably like, oh, is fish okay? And like he started like serving them up some salmon, and that's where it came from, right? And that's like the Pilgrims and the Native Americans with like the Thanksgiving story for First Contact Day.
And
Let's
then
headcanon that.
and then he got all his tequila, and the Vulcans got pissed at us for like 100 years.
Yeah. That's why like Zephram Cochrane was such an animal that night. That's why like in Star Trek Enterprise when the Vulcans are like, yeah, we really need to slow down their progression into like the galaxy's not ready for humanity. That's fun to think about. But yeah, 40 years. Next year it'll only be 39 years. That's nuts. So from 1996 to 2063, that's what? That's 67 years total. So we're how long till we're halfway there, right? I did the math correct, right? Yeah, 63 plus 4, so 67. So half of 67 is what? 33, 34. So
Yeah.
that'll be in 20. So in 7 more years we'll be halfway there, right?
Yeah.
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 No, it's seven more years we'll be over halfway there. So cool. So yeah, hopefully we make it.
But we don't even know much about Discovery Season 4. I mean, I like that it's a shame because each season is genuinely getting better. They're evolving the format to be more interesting. Um,
On what show? What show are you talking about?
Discovery.
Okay. You're talking about
Um,
like knowing more about season 5?
yeah, I mean, all we
Okay.
kind of know, and I like the vibe of the trailer because although it's another season-long plot line that presumably is a mystery, it kind of felt Indiana Jones-esque, and I like that.
That's what they're making the story look like. Yeah, and when they talk about it, when they showed that trailer, it seems like it'll still have like a little bit like that JJ Abrams mystery box, because like we literally see like this mysterious box like someone's trying to open or something. So I think it will be a bit like, get the MacGuffin. I think it will be like a bit like big high stakes. It looks like they're introducing some interesting bad guys though. They typically don't have like a good like strong villain for the season right off the bat. I guess they kind of did with season 1 with like Lorca secretly being but even he's not like the final boss. They still end up with dealing with like the Klingons and stuff on their own after the Mirror Universe stuff. So uh season 2, there's not really, I guess, like Control, but even like that like kind of comes in fairly late in the season. Season 3 they mention Osira, but they don't really make her a big part of the show until near the end. So in season 4, like the 10C were not really like true villains.
But with season 4, they also had what? Oh, I can't remember his name, but the guy that was trying to get back to his lover.
Oh,
Um,
Tarka,
well,
the
yeah, because that was great because it was kind of Osira was very one-dimensional, and it turned into Die Hard in Space.
yeah,
But with Tarka, we were led to expect that he was a villain, and we were
great
constant.
performance too.
Yeah,
Love that
yeah,
actor.
we were constantly kind of you know, people were constantly, okay, is he good? Why is he like this? And then we got
Mhm.
hints about the other universe, like him trying to um he got more depth as the season went along. And maybe he could have maybe the stuff with him and Book could have been more organic, like, Book probably wouldn't have really done that. It didn't feel realistic for him to just turn his back and burn him so quickly, but it was kind of fueled by grief, and it was interesting the way he was so easily manipulated by someone who was also kind of struggling with grief in a way.
Yeah, Jill in our live audience is asking what happened to old Tarka. She forgot, but yeah, he basically did not really have enough power to beam to his ideal universe where he thought he would meet his long lost love or friend. They never really said if that was his friend or his boyfriend, but I think they were in love. But he basically like he didn't have enough power to make the transport over. He was about to blow up, but he's like, well, I'm just gonna try it anyways and hope for the best. So he probably blew up. Maybe there's a slim chance he made it, but yeah, I doubt we'll ever know or see him again. Season 5, we're getting like their new Bonnie and Clyde characters. They're like right off the bat. So wouldn't it be cool if I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer was something like you never got into, Robbie. I know it was like from before your time, but
No, I've not seen it at all.
the second season of that show has Spike and Drusilla as kind of like the villains, and they're kind of fun to watch because they're really nasty bad guys. They're really terrible, but they're like madly in love with each other and genuinely care about each other. So that was kind of a fun bad guy duo. Maybe we'll have something like that in season 5. I'm not, I don't need every villain in Star Trek to be like Khan, to be like this, incredibly interesting, complex person. It's sometimes just like, okay, like just give me like a fun baddie to cause some problems for our heroes and give them some obstacles they have to overcome. Like I
I
just need like a Krug from Star Trek 3. It doesn't have to be a Khan from Star Trek 2.
I would argue that even Khan himself isn't, you know, that complex. I mean, he's given so much for the performance and
Mm.
the history and Space Siege, but you know, he's kind of just like a revenge.
Yeah, just like a very basic
Yeah,
Captain Ahab type.
and I feel like Vadic's similar so far, but the performance and the kind of elegant way she's being written is keeping her quite interesting. I don't think any villain is quite, a Ducat. Um, he was the top tier villain.
Well, we all know Gul Dukat is actually the top tier villain, but Khan's a close runner up.
Khan has well, they're both theatrical, but you couldn't have the cat in a film because you don't have the time
Right.
to flesh that out.
Yeah. No, he's a perfect like long form TV villain. And even I know Khan was created on the TV show. But Khan is like the perfect, like one appearance. Here's like a big spectacle. He is gonna have like big, long lasting consequence. Like Wrath of Khan feels like an event. Star Trek 3 is basically the Wrath of Khan hangover. Like Spock is dead, the Enterprise is all battle damage. It's like, yeah, like Khan, is a big deal. But yeah, that's kind of the beauty of Khan's. Like, it's not like I don't know if you could tell like a long ongoing story with him. I guess you could, if I guess like a great writer would find a way. But yeah, like what's the what would be like, the ongoing uh even like this new Nicholas Meyer project they want to do with Khan was only ever going to be a mini series, that now I guess is getting turned into a podcast, a story on Steady Alpha 5. It's yeah, like Khan wouldn't have been like a great Deep Space Nine villain that they encounter multiple times a season, year after year. He probably would have come up as like kind of lame. It's like, oh, like this guy, like we just kick his ass 2 or 3 times a year and he goes away. But with Dukat, it's like, oh, sometimes Dukat will be our friend and sometimes he's our enemy. And look at this. It's more than just like a guy on the ship who wants to blow you up.
Yeah, and I suppose that kind of ties back into why I felt Vatic, like seeing just glimpses of her backstory in the episode. It's the writers trying to maybe we'll see more of her backstory. But I feel like it's so difficult the amount of characters they have to balance. Vadic's a completely new character that we have to understand. And it's not the way she's written, it's just because they don't have the time,
Mm.
to yeah.
Yeah, I say a lot of Trekkies, actually, call for like they wish we had like, these longer seasons, like the big 26 episode seasons again. But I I get like that instinct. I think there's a lot of like subpar episodes of Star Trek that didn't live up to their full potential, and watch like most episodes in season 3 of the original series, but also like there's a lot of TNG episodes that I kind of have a hard time rewatching. There's a lot of like early Voyager episodes I really struggle with, or Enterprise, even DS9, which I love. It's my favorite Star Trek ever. There's most seasons at least have like 1 or 2 episodes I just like roll my eyes whenever I sit through it again. But yeah, with modern Star Trek, I don't get that as much when I go back and like rewatch the show. I think there is like a little bit more consistency. I'm not getting as many of like those really like great episodes. Like with TNG, I think their first great episode, like one of like all-time greats of Star Trek, was in season 2 with Measure of a Man. I think DS9 hit it a little quicker in season 1, but with Duet. And I think they might not like really hit it again until season 4 with The Visitor. Was there any like 2 or 3 seasons 2 or 3 that are on that level?
In season 3, it's not quite. You know what? This isn't even the same caliber, but I like Heart of Stone, because that kind of gives us a whole new aspect to. It's not like an amazing episode on its own. It's more of like a
It's a good character episode for Odo,
yeah.
though. Like,
You've got Nog as well.
oh my god, the Nog stuff in that episode is phenomenal. I'm so glad they highlight that in the documentary. God, I
Yeah.
want to like start crying now. I'm thinking about like how like just Aaron Eisenberg's enthusiasm when he talks about that. If people don't remember, Robbie, if you want to explain what you were talking about, the actual scene.
Well, it's basically when Nog kind of is trying to prove to Sisko that he has what it takes to be a Starfleet officer, and that he doesn't want to be like Rom, who has a capable engineering skill set, but he just buckles under Quark's dominating presence, and because he's family, and just um, lives with the distant idea of him perhaps inheriting the bar if Quark dies. Whereas Nog decides to make a change from Ferengi tradition and his family and say, no, I'm gonna do my own kind of thing, and I'm gonna become a part of this DS9 family. I'm going to prove to Sisko, who really tests him. We see that quite a lot with Sisko testing, rattling Ezri's cage, and then obviously Nog. If you want to get through to Sisko, you have to really show him what you're worth. And Nog goes through that stock check, all on his own, and proves himself.
Jill 47 is also saying that she thinks Explorers from DS9 season 3 is a treasure of an episode, and of course it deserves a lot of recognition for being the first time that Sisko grew his beard. So we all know that Star Trek gets better after someone grows a beard, right? Riker had to do it for TNG. There's no beards on Voyager or on Enterprise. No one ever grew a beard. Chakotay did for a little bit in Year of Hell, and I guess that's the that's one of the greater Voyager episodes. But yeah, they no one else ever had beards.
T'Pol's hair got better.
Yeah, T'Pol changed a little. It was what, going from season 2 to season 3, like her eyebrows changed or something. Snoopy
Yeah.
McQueen is here in the live audience with a very generous super chat of $5. Thank you for that, Snoopy. He says, I am concerned about Starfleet Academy in the 25th century. How do you, I think he meant 32nd, but how do you do 32nd century tech better in 25th century? So that's a great point. That's something we should talk about. The next show, the new show, the latest thing that they've announced is the Academy show. They haven't come out and said it's the 32nd century, but the stuff that I had been hearing from people was that the show that they're pitching, they're trying to develop, it will be 32nd Century. The announcement that they gave us last week, or was it the week before? I don't know. Recently, I guess it was last week. They said that the first time the Academy has been open in over a century. So it's like, okay, this is post Burn. They did the setup for this in Disco season 3. So they're like, Star Trek Discovery, they like to do like the proof of concept episodes. I've never heard anyone confirm this, but you know, the season 2 episode, what was season 2 episode 2 with the church planet?
New Eden.
New Eden. That basically, like, that episode starred Pike. It was a self-contained, done in one episode about like, a strange new world. And okay, that was clearly like, you know, their proof of concept. It was written by Akiva Goldsman, who wanted to develop Strange New Worlds. It's like, okay, that was like the backdoor pilot for Strange New Worlds. Then I think they did something similar in the next episode, Point of Light, which had you know, Michelle Yeoh doing like the Klingon politics stuff on Kronos. I think that was kind of like their proof of concept for like Section 31 show. And then in Disco season 4, they had what was the episode with Tilly and the kids?
All is possible.
All is possible. So that's the show that I think that they're wanting to make. And maybe it'll star Mary Wiseman. Maybe, I know like she took some time off in season 4 because she was doing some stage work in New York and she wanted to focus on that. So I don't know if she wants to be a regular on a TV show, but if she, I mean, you know, especially if she's getting top billing, then I think it's possible. I don't know if I would say likely, but I think it's very possible that we have a Mary Wiseman led show. So I guess that's another advantage of the 32nd Century. They can use whatever Discovery characters they have, and it does kind of limit them. You know, they can't pull as much from other eras of Star Trek, except my good friend Rachel, who's frequently on the Tex-Trek show that we do on Fridays, pointed out that hey, if they're in the 32nd Century, they would have like holographic records of all the famous people that we know throughout Star Trek. And I thought like, oh my goodness, like how they do hologram Janeway in Prodigy. Yeah, they could do hologram anyone in Starfleet Academy. You know, they could bring in Enterprise characters. They could bring in original. They could have like a George Takei could show. I don't think he will, but it's possible they could have George Takei as like a hologram Sulu. He's like, okay, pilots, I'm going to give you your piloting lesson today. You know, if you want to be the helmsman on a starship, you have to learn to fly. So you know, they could have Geordi come do engineering lessons. They could do or O'Brien or anyone, B'Elanna, anyone.
I feel like the two names that would be most suited to that kind of thing would be O'Brien and Keiko, because you know Keiko had the teaching
Oh
on
yeah.
DS9.
I never thought about that, Robbie. But then, like, her husband becomes a teacher, so he's got
Yeah,
like an experienced teacher wife by his side.
it'd be. I feel like, you know, I feel like we're gonna be seeing the Discovery. I would like to see the Discovery characters become. Wouldn't it be really cool if they became teachers, like after, you know, in season 5, like maybe after they've solved their mystery, they decide to settle into the the universe, and maybe we see them as like the kind of mentor figures to, you know, presumably the younger characters we're
Yeah.
going to be meeting.
And I think like Professor Saru would be amazing. I think like Professor Kolber would be amazing. A lot of these people seem like they would make like really cool teachers in this type of show. But I think they could introduce, you know, new teachers, like new like what if there's like, I don't know, like some like Ferengi or some 32nd century I don't know, like maybe we get like a Romulan or Vulcan from Navarre. Jill says that she wants more Kovich. I think he would be really great to you know, have his presence at the Academy. Remember that like hologram dude with the bow tie that they had in season 3 at Starfleet HQ, and like he
Yeah,
never showed up in season 4. I think that might have been like a COVID thing. I think like that actor couldn't. I don't know if this is true, but I heard like there was someone in season 3 who couldn't work in season 4 because of COVID. And so I'm just guessing. I could be way off, but I just assume it was him since he's the one who doesn't show up. I might be totally wrong. But yeah, he's another possible, or just the fact that they have like that holographic technology, you know, anyone could show up. So I think that there is some potential there in the 32nd century. But you know, Snoopy was saying 25th century would be better for the Academy. Uh I think that there's a good shot that we get a 25th century show just based on how people seem to like Picard season 3. I do not know if it will be the one that Terry Matalas wants to make. And I'd be okay with that too, you know, if they go in like a different direction. But I would love to see like Shaw and Seven and Sydney and Jack again. I really want to see more of them. What do you think? What do you think, Robbie? I know I've seen you be enthused for the possibility of Star Trek Legacy.
Um, I feel like that I'm just really enjoying the crew, not even the main character. Well, our main characters from the TNG Voyager cast, but you know, the younger characters, I feel like they have had enough charisma and you know, even in their smaller scenes, we don't really know Sydney that well, but from what I've saw, I feel like she could be, you know, a really engaging character. I'm already engaged with her in the small scenes we've got. And it would be really cool, maybe a bit unrealistic to see the sons and daughters of our TNG characters kind of to see them progress. Maybe it's probably unrealistic for them to all be in the same ship. I don't know, but I don't even know what they would do, you know, because I assume that if Terry Matalas got his spin-off show, it would be less nostalgic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with it in Picard season 3 because he's only got 10 episodes to kind of get his fan fiction out there and do
Yeah,
everything he wants.
this could be the last time he ever works on Star Trek, for all he knows. So
Yeah,
he's throw everything in the kitchen sink, I guess, is his mentality.
but I'd hope that I'd like to see, you know, familiar characters pop up, but less references that we've had in Picard season 3. We've had a lot of references, and more exploring these new characters. I don't know what that would take the form of, whether it's exploring planets, but then wouldn't that be too like
No, I think
Strange New Worlds? I don't know.
I think that they'll want to do like these big arcs like they did in season 3. Which I mean Prodigy proves you can tell like good ongoing story arcs in modern Star Trek. So if they can do it, if they can maintain like the quality of Picard season 3, but it's like you said earlier, like most of the reasons why we're loving Picard season 3 so much is not so much the plot, but more so the just the way that the characters are being used.
Yeah, even a Starfleet Academy show, which is an interesting premise. I don't even know how that would look. Obviously, there's so many interesting kind of ideas you could have, but I assume that's not going to be sitting around temporal mechanics classes, which would be incredibly boring, but you know, would be more field trips and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
And a lot of like it'll kind of lean like that teen angst thing. It'll be a lot of like, oh my god, does this person like me? And I thought I liked this person, but I actually want to date this other person. It's gonna be a lot of that. It's gonna be a lot of kids in love for the first time. I know some people will roll their eyes at that, but that's a very popular format for a lot of genre shows and movies and stuff. Like Harry Potter, one of the biggest movie franchises of all time, was about like a bunch of kids going to school. The biggest shows on Netflix right now are probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just gonna say Stranger Things, Cobra Kai, and Wednesday. Like,
yeah,
guess what?
yeah.
All of those have in common. They're all about like teenagers who go to school together. So
They're all very well. As Stranger Things, particularly, I think that's just a really well written show.
but yeah, hopefully Academy will be some quality writing. I think that there's potential there. It was not of all the proposed shows, like a lot of us want a 25th century show. A lot of us, I want them to do something with Michelle Yeoh for Section 31 because they said like we're going to explain Section 31 why it is the way it is. I'm like, okay, I want that explanation. I don't know if we're getting that anymore though, because that was more of like Bowie Kim and Erica Lapolt when they were in charge of the show, and they I guess broke the story for an entire season, and I don't know how many episodes they actually scripted, but it got to the point to where like yeah, they were paid to work on a season of a show. Like that was their mission statement, was that like, yeah, we're gonna explain all the things in Section 31 that you think don't make sense or that you think go against the ethos of the Star Trek universe. We're gonna explain it, we're gonna fix it for you. It's like, okay, cool. I want to see you try to do that. Hopefully you pull it off. But yeah, I wanted something 31. I wanted something in the 25th century. Would even be open to like another animated show. I think there's some cool stuff they could do there. I'm hyped about more Strange New Worlds and more 23rd century. The thing that I guess was the least excited for would have been an Academy show or would have
Hmm.
been something else in the 32nd century. However, that being said, I'm still very open to the potential of this show. My long time co-host Dave had the opposite experience. For him, this was the potential show he most wanted. He wanted to stay in the 32nd century after Discovery, and he wanted an Academy show. And he's a big fan of Mary Wiseman as Tilly, so was hoping it'd be something that she could be a part of. And one of the things I asked him was, me as like a huge Prodigy fan. I know he's been enjoying Prodigy also, but I was like, doesn't this scratch the itch for you? Like we have our cadet show now. It's called Star Trek Prodigy, and he said that as much as he does like Prodigy, but there's stuff like you could do on a live action show with these young actors that like you can't do on like an animated show on Nickelodeon. Like I think a lot of people are going to want something like a little bit more serious. A lot of people are, like a lot of the stuff I was talking about were like, oh yeah, like they're gonna shoot. I don't even know what I should say shoehorn in, but they're gonna pack in some like romantic storylines, a little bit of like that type of drama and stuff. It's like, yeah, like you can't have like like those sexy moments between young people on Prodigy that you can get away with in live action, something geared more to like the YA audience or like that CW crowd. So
Well, I believe there's a CW writer involved, and we know Tawny Newsome is going to be involved in some capacity. So I assume
yes.
she's going to bring humor to the show.
Gotta shout out Snoopy McQueen again with another very kind super chat of $2. He says, "Give me Section 31, Michelle." Yeah, Snoopy. That's what I want. Especially now that we know it's not going to be an ongoing show starring her. Alex Kurtzman said a few days ago that one of the things they're going to be looking into on Paramount Plus Star Trek stuff is doing these shorter types of event series or things like that, which I think he means like, yeah, we'll do like a mini series. It'll be like, only like 2 or 3 weeks and that's it. Or maybe it'll just be like a made for streaming movie. Like Paramount Plus does that. There's made for streaming movies on there. So not Star Trek with other stuff, but I kind of want that more because, okay, if you're just gonna do like a big fun thing with Michelle Yeoh, it'll draw a lot of eyes to Star Trek, and it'll address some of my Section 31 concerns. I guess there's also the risk that it might like make them worse, but hopefully it addresses them. Yeah,
If
I'm all for that.
if it is going to make it worse, it's only going to be for a film, presumably. So,
Yeah, that's something. It's not like an ongoing show I have to live
yeah,
with, for years and years. So
but also I feel like I'm so sick of the mirror universe, but Boyeon Kim, the I think it must be season 3. The episodes in the mirror universe they wrote were really fantastic.
yeah,
Um,
there is stuff that they wrote in Discovery that I really liked. So I was excited to see them get their own show. And I know that they talked to Ira Stephen Bear at some point because on the cruise he was talking about he had discussions with the people working on Section 31, and he was saying their idea would basically be like Section 31. They start off as like kind of the good guys, but then the organization becomes more sinister. It was kind of that was the idea they were going for. So like yeah, that would line up with kind of what I was thinking. What must be the outcome, if they're like an official part of Starfleet in season 2 of Discovery, but then in Deep Space Nine, no one's heard of them, and they're this very like off the books secretive thing. Picard season 3 kind of messes that up, with maybe
yeah.
like, no, we went back to like Discovery season 2. They're like an official part of Starfleet intelligence or whatever. It's like, okay, did we really need to do that? I'm getting whiplash from all this back and forth. Are they like an official part of Starfleet, or are they a secret rogue organization? Make up your minds. I guess they go back and forth though.
Do you think Star Trek's ever restricted by the fact that it sticks with Starfleet, as a whole?
um I mean, I like Starfleet.
Hmm.
I would never want like a Star Trek show that just totally ignores Starfleet, but there's so many good stories you can tell in the universe outside of Starfleet. I think Deep Space Nine explored that wonderfully by having half of that cast not even be in Starfleet. I think the first couple seasons of Picard really weren't that Starfleet focused. They weren't Starfleet centric. It was more like this retired admiral and whoever he happens to be hanging out with that season and those adventures. So I don't think it feels restricted because I mean that is like normal for Star Trek to be Starfleet stories, but there's a lot of fertile ground out there that isn't Starfleet relate. Maybe it's like Starfleet adjacent might be a good place to dabble. Prodigy is very like it's not Starfleet early on, but as you watch the shows, you watch the 20 episodes, it becomes more and more and more Starfleet. To eventually, you get to the end and like, oh wow, like they're standing at like HQ and the Academy, and like they're there in San Francisco. So
I never want, any Star Trek shows to be completely detached from that, but I like that, the fact that we've had Prodigy, which at the beginning was very alien to us, and then although I'm not, keen on the idea of a Section 31 project, it shows that they're kind of trying to expand a bit, I never want to get away from Starfleet, I'm glad we have lots of Starfleet set shows, but I like that they're trying to, do something a bit different.
I just want to say hi to a couple people that are in the audience now. Quark's Bar is here. Hope you're doing well today. And Jeremiah has stopped by, who goes on to say that he's not caught up on Picard, but he's asking, wasn't Section 31 destroyed in DS9? And no, we don't really learn the final fate of Section 31 after Sloane dies in DS9. But yeah, it clearly was not the end of Section 31. They're still active in Picard season 3, it would seem. So you'll get to that when you get to it, I guess, Jeremiah. I hope we didn't spoil anything too important for you, um but yeah, the potential for like the 25th century, I'm kind of glad that like the Academy show is not in the 25th century, actually, now that I'm saying this out loud, because I mean that frees up the 25th century for to be explored in something else.
I feel like it would be so easy for that to become like a fanfare of nostalgic teachers. I don't know, in the 25th
Yeah,
century.
it might become too much of a of a thing. But like the way like Picard season 3 is done with not, I mean, yeah, obviously like they're making a big deal out of a lot of nostalgia for like the TNG cast and them returning, but the way that it can just very casually have a Tuvok show up, or is it Tuvok? But just like that, casual use of Tim Russ like that for a quick scene. I think stuff like that. A lot of what Star Trek Online has done, over the years, like that 25th century setting, just gives you a lot of potential to tap into the TNG, DS9, Voyager, uh, part of the franchise, and even you can even dig like a little deeper and reach into like TOS. I think that it's possible that Chekhov or Sulu are still active in the 25th century. They're going to be like really old, but they might still be alive. If not, though, like you could always do like a flashback or something to when they were a little younger. If we ever get like them like on, I mean, George Takei did return to Lower Decks last year, so it's not too much of a stretch. Wouldn't it be great if they get Walter Koenig on Lower Decks like this year?
I mean, the Anna. Oh well, Lord X. Yeah, that would be awesome. I feel like animation is a bit easy. It's great that we've got the
Yeah,
animation to
people
to
can
bring.
literally like do it over the phone.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I feel like eventually, when we've got Picard as a show, once that's finished, we'll probably see like, I don't know, Patrick Stewart or Michael Dorn show up in Lower Decks at some point, in a holodeck or something.
Aaron is now saying that an Academy show set right after the founding of the Federation would be really interesting and leaves very few nostalgia trips with guest stars. So yeah, I guess you could have like Archer and the Enterprise gang show up on there. But yeah, other than that, it would have to be it would have to stand on its own. That would still be fun though. Like it'd be nice to like have Shran drop by or Travis Mayweather or something. I would be okay with that. But yeah, that I would love to explore something else in the 22nd century, like post Enterprise. I think if they do another animated show aimed at a Nickelodeon audience after Prodigy, here's like my idea that I would pitch would be like, what if we did like an animated kind of like Bruce Timm actiony cartoon that would be set during the Earth Romulan War and just kind of explore that war. And it would be like a little bit more action than your typical Star Trek, but still, you know, stay true to like the Star Trek values. And because it is 22nd century and it is like right before the foundation of the Federation, you have like a little bit of wiggle room. You know, mankind is still figuring things out. And you know, you would kind of end that show with the formation of the of the Federation, and you know, do the things that Enterprise probably would have done if it had stayed on the air a bit longer. Uh, that was a thing that I always questioned at the time when they did like the Xindi Wars. Like, why don't they just like have this be the Romulans and just give us like the Earth Romulan War?
Well, that's because Brannon was not a huge TOS guy, was
Yeah,
or Behrman, you know. But
and it's a shame that they didn't have Ron Moore, because Ron Moore was a huge TOS guy. And if they hadn't have driven him away on Voyager, if they still had him on Star Trek, I think that they would have done something really amazing with Enterprise if he had wanted to. I don't know if he would have wanted to stick around. But you know, of course, he went on to do Battlestar Galactica, and we got Galactica instead.
well,
I like Galactica.
I consider those like see the last stretch of season 4, you've got some are clunkers, but you've got see the Vulcan trilogy. That's one of the
That's
most
great. The
engaging stories to me. Not only does it like undo a lot of the problems in the first 3 seasons, but it's like a whole 3 episode arc that fleshes out the Vulcans more than I guess you could say any other story. You know, it's all about that culture.
it's a great example of like, oh, I'm gonna like fix this thing in Star Trek that people don't like, but I'm gonna do it with like a good story. I'm not just it doesn't feel like I'm just going out of my way to address this one little thing, you know. Like I know a lot of people complain about the augment virus. I was okay with that. I liked the bumpy heads being explained, but I get like some people were like that was like a distraction and not like a story that needed to be told. However, the Vulcan trilogy is fantastic, and it also introduced Todd Stashwick to the Trek franchise. So very cool. There's one thing I would kind of a big thing I would change in it though. If I could go back and change something, I would have made it Trip is the one who carries Surak's Katra instead of Archer,
Why?
because it would have given him and T'Pol something to do together.
Ah, okay.
And
Yeah,
it
because yeah.
but you know, I get like the captain is the main character of the Star Trek shows, and even as recent as Enterprise, they still kind of had that like oh yeah, like the main character needs to be the main character type of mentality.
Well,
Um
the Trip and T'Pol had great chemistry, but they every time they were trying to further the relationship, it was the same kind of scene again and again. It was
it
just
got
that
real
stupid
repetitive, yeah.
neural pressure, you know.
But I love the stuff in season 4 with the two of them. It's such a shame that we didn't get to see that continue. And one of the reasons why I really hate These Are the Voyages is when it's like, oh, you wanted them to get together? Well, guess what? It never happened.
Yeah, they just skip all that interesting stuff.
Yeah. It's like season 4 of Enterprise was so good, and then Rick Berman and Brandon Braga had to come back and write the fit. This is like if you stop watching right before that episode, there's such a perfect for real, it's like a perfect ending. If you watch uh Demons and Terra Prime, or is it Terra Prime and Demons? I can't
Demons
remember.
and Terra
Okay.
Prime.
But if you watch like those two episodes, that's kind of, you know how all those Berman era shows ended with a big two-parter, like All Good Things, What You Leave Behind, Endgame. That is like the big two-part finale of Enterprise, and that when Archer gives that speech at the end in front of all those delegates, and when Ambassador Saval is the first one to applaud, and it's like, okay, that moment when Saval applauds Archer, this guy who's been like an antagonist for 4 seasons. To me, that's the climax of Enterprise.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that because they had such low budget, you know, they were doing these epic kind of 3-part
Mm-hmm.
arcs. Um, in that last, well, I think it must be Terra Prime. The fact that this kind of intergalactic kind of um conversation, diplomacy is happening in like this tiny hall that's barely decorated that looks like some early 2000s, you know, American, I don't know, like town center or something. Like it looks so bland and
What are
boring.
you talking about?
See they have the round table where Archer makes that speech in that
Oh yeah,
building.
yeah, yeah.
It's so cheap looking.
Well, sometimes Star Trek has cheap looking sets and stuff, I guess. Yeah, but I love the look of season 4. Well, that's when they switched from film to digital, and I think like the sets look so much better, and they added like more color on the displays and stuff. It really like I don't know, it just looked nice. It just looked good. I remember going into season 4 back in 2004. I just like, I'm not liking Enterprise as much as I liked the other Star Trek shows. Are we really doing like another season of this? That Xindi thing didn't pay off for me the way I wanted. They're moving it to Friday nights. This is like that Friday night death slot. It's probably going to be the last season. I wish they would just make a different Star Trek show instead. I guess this is the last year, so I might as well try to enjoy it. And then by the end of season 4, it's like, oh my God, this show got so good. I love it so much. Please don't cancel Enterprise. Please, I want more. I want more. So, and to be fair, that ain't the only Star Trek show that got really great in season 4. I think TNG is much better season 4 going forward. I think DS9, season 4 is when they brought in Worf. I think Voyager, when they add 7 and 9 to Voyager, I love that show so much more. It just season 4 Voyager is great. Yeah, I was sad we didn't get more Enterprise, but maybe we'll see some type of follow up to it at some point in this modern era of Trek. That's the coolest thing right now. Is it just feels like anything is possible. I think if they really want to do more 25th century stuff, they don't necessarily have to look at TV shows. I think maybe that's where they need to go with the movies now. Patrick Stewart and
Yeah,
Jonathan Frakes, all those
yeah.
guys are saying like they want to do movies, so maybe
That
that's what
would
we do that
it
for the movies.
that would probably be a better approach than, another Kelvin timeline film that's never gonna happen. You could get Jonathan Frakes as director. Um, these guys are all ready to do it, so it would be
Mm-hmm.
Terry Matalas involved. I'm sure he'd love to, and the writing team for Picard season 3. You already have an inbuilt audience through Picard season 3, which is pretty popular.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that might be like a good avenue for do 25th century stuff in movies, and then give us I guess we're getting like the Academy show in the 32nd century, and we're getting more Strange New Worlds in the 23rd, and let the 2 animated shows keep doing what they're doing, because both those animated shows, Lower Decks and Prodigy, they both know they know what they want to do, and they're doing it. So they've been consistently doing their thing for years now.
Yeah, Vortex it never misses a beat. It's just the same fun every season.
Jill is asking, does Paramount even know we're waiting for announcements today? So yeah, we're not getting any announcements, so that's not happening. I guess First Contact Day is getting smaller and smaller because like we were talking earlier, like 2021 they had like a big event. Last year, 2022, they just did that Picard season 3 teaser trailer that showed all the actors' names, and then today we get posters. So I don't know what we'll get next year. Maybe we'll just get like a tweet that just says "Happy First Contact Day" and that's it. I don't know, but there's still plenty to be excited about. I'm really looking forward to Strange New Worlds coming back in June. The thing I was going to say about that show earlier, but I guess when I was talking about like how like Duet is like the first great DS9 episode, or how Measure of a Man's like the first great TNG episode. I feel like Strange New Worlds, they still haven't hit like that truly great, like an episode that's like it's like a contender for like the top 10 best Trek episodes of all time. They ain't done
Yeah,
that yet, but maybe
every
season
episode's
2.
been good, but I feel like Equality of Mercy was you can't really count that because it's kind of like it's a remake of Balance of Terror,
It
but
stands on the back of a Balance of
yeah,
Terror, yeah. I know for some people it was on that caliber, but to be honest, Robbie, that was actually That was one of the two episodes of Strange New Worlds that I don't think they were bad, but they didn't wow me as much as the others. It
It
was
it did feel more like, it was a fan. Like talk about Terry Metalis being too much of a fan. That episode was a whole load of fan service.
yeah, certainly. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. I know it's getting late. We're gonna wrap things up. Uh, sorry to say that, Rachel. Right when you get here, she says hi. Just got out of work, but yeah, we're gonna call it a day. I don't know about you, Robbie. I have some first contact day celebrations I'm gonna do. I think that the first four, or the only four, the TNG movies, they came out on 4K Blu-ray yesterday, right? Wasn't that when they
Yeah,
were?
yeah, they did. I think I saw some
Okay,
post.
I
Yeah.
had forgotten about that, so I am gonna run off to Best Buy, buy that, and then tonight I think I'm gonna watch Generations and First Contact in 4K.
You're not a
So
fan
that'll
of Generations though, right?
It is my least favorite Star Trek movie, but I still rewatch it. I don't skip it. There's things I like in it. I'm excited to see it in 4K. What does the Enterprise B bridge look like in 4K? I don't know.
Yeah.
Guess I'll find out. Oh,
Oh, and
and I gotta go because I'm getting a phone call. But
okay.
what do you got, Robbie?
Well, the last thing I was gonna say was I feel like talking about, like appearances, I feel like we're gonna see some familiar faces considering the fact that, we're gonna apparently see the whole fleet on Frontier Day.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're gonna get some big fun stuff in these last three episodes of Picard. I'm dying to see what kind of surprises they're saving for the last two. But yeah, big ship battle stuff. I think some more legacy characters are gonna show up. I think we're gonna get someone from DS9. We've had Voyager
Yeah.
people, but not any DS9 people. So I think they're gonna show up. And yeah, whatever our final bad guy is, I hope that it lives up to everyone's hopes and expectations, and we enjoy it, and we get to have like a cool send-off of the TNG crew. I think the Enterprise D will roll out a Hangar 12. I think that's what's in there, and we'll get like a big ending where everyone signs their name like Star Trek 6. I hope, fingers crossed, that's what I'm hoping to see. We will find out. Of course, we'll be covering it on Tex-Trek every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central. We stream live discussing whatever episode is out. Picard, Strange New Worlds, Prodigy, Discovery, Starfleet Academy. And you can also listen to the show wherever you get your podcast. And I hope people enjoyed our first contact day stream. Everyone has a happy, safe first contact day with plenty of salmon. And I'll see all of y'all in Bozeman 40 years from now. We're gonna party it up. First contact day 2063. But until next time, whenever that is, live long and prosper, y'all.